All it took was one glance at a nearly invisible metal thread on the detective's shoulder, and just like that, he cracked an international case worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
You know what this is? It's a security fiber for the new Canadian $100 bill.
This guy's name is Neil. He was serving a 4-year sentence as a convicted felon. But then, with only 3 months left until his release, he suddenly decided to break out of prison. He shaved off the beard he'd been growing for years, slicked his hair back with toilet water, and pulled out a guard uniform he'd hidden in the toilet tank. With his appearance completely transformed, he walked right out of that bathroom and strolled past the prison guards. Not a single person recognized him. As he brushed past one of the guards, he smoothly lifted the access card right off him. He swiped it to open the door. Freedom was just one step away. Lucky for him, the new guard on duty didn't know all his co-workers yet, and just like that, Neil walked right out of that prison in broad daylight. Next, he spotted a maintenance van in the parking lot. He tried hot wiring the engine, and didn't forget to crank up some soulful music for the ride. He drove the stolen vehicle into the airport parking area, making it look like he was about to catch a flight out of the country. Instead, he bought a yellow work uniform and waited until a convertible Rolls-Royce pulled up to the terminal. That's when he disguised himself as a valet and approached the car. The owner naturally assumed he was just airport valet staff.
Take good care, we'll be back in a month.
Neil not only pocketed a $100 tip but also scored himself a luxury car for a whole month. Meanwhile, FBI agent Peter Burke, who'd arrested Neil before, ran into some serious trouble. A group of thieves had stolen cash from a bank vault and then changed the lock combination. With help from a professional locksmith, they finally cracked that the code had been changed to 324. But just as Burke was about to open the vault, he suddenly realized something.
Wait!
The explosion destroyed all the evidence. The thieves had deliberately set the vault code to 324 on the keypad, which spelled out FBI. It was basically their way of mocking the federal agent's incompetence. Just as Burke was frustrated about the destroyed evidence, his assistant brought him another piece of bad news. Neil Caffrey escaped. He'd spent 5 whole years hunting Neil down and getting him locked up, and now he just waltzed right out? Since Burke knew Neil better than anyone, the commander handed the case back to him. When Burke arrived at the prison, he noticed Neil had been carving marks on the wall for every single day served. He'd been counting down to his release. But here's the thing: he didn't escape early on, didn't escape late. He chose to break out with just 3 months left on his sentence. Something must have happened. Burke immediately pulled up the visitor logs. They showed that Neil's girlfriend visited him every single week, but she hadn't shown up recently. The surveillance footage of their conversations had no audio, so Burke had to read their lips to figure out what they were saying.
Adios, Neil. It's been real.
This made Burke realize that Neil's escape had to be connected to his girlfriend Kate, and he knew exactly where Kate lived. Sure enough, he found Neil there, sitting on the floor, staring blankly at an empty wine bottle.
Should leave you a message in that?
The bottle is the message.
Burke's hunch was right. Neil had escaped for his girlfriend. Unfortunately, he was too late. Kate had already disappeared without a word. This escape was going to cost Neil 4 more years added to his sentence, but he didn't care at all, because Kate was his entire world. Just as Neil was about to surrender and get arrested by Burke for the second time, he noticed that metal thread on Burke's shoulder. This criminal mastermind, who was an expert at forging art, naturally knew what it was. He made a deal with Burke right there on the spot. He told him it was the security strip from the new Canadian $100 bill, and demanded that Burke come visit him in prison. At first, Burke didn't care, but soon enough, his assistant confirmed what Neil had said.
Caffrey was right. That stuff from the bank vault, security fibers for the new Canadian 100.
The next moment, Burke showed up at the prison, but Neil had already expected him to come. He said he could help solve this international case. The condition? Burke had to get him released on bail as a special FBI consultant, but Burke refused to cooperate. He knew just how slippery Neil could be. Neil was thrown back in prison. Looking at the days marked on the wall one by one, he realized he was about to waste another 4 years of his life there. His deep worry about his missing girlfriend left him restless and distracted. Back at home, Burke was conflicted. He told his wife about Neil. He figured someone as brilliant as Neil would never risk escaping for a girlfriend. There had to be some hidden agenda. That's when his wife asked a deadly question.
If you were Neil, you wouldn't have run from me?
That question hit Burke right in his core, so he bailed Neil out of prison, put an electronic ankle monitor on him to prevent escape, and warned him not to go looking for his girlfriend. Neil agreed to everything. Because of budget constraints, Neil was placed in a rundown motel. There was no way Neil wanted to live like he was still locked up, but Burke reminded him that the ankle monitor's range was only 2 miles. If he went beyond that, it would trigger an alarm. But he seriously underestimated Neil's capabilities. After Burke left, Neil immediately went to a nearby thrift store. A wealthy woman was donating old clothes. Neil could tell she had class, so he struck up a conversation. He learned she was donating her late husband's old clothes. After hearing this, Neil immediately turned on his charm. Using his good looks and worldly knowledge, along with his high emotional intelligence, he quickly won the widow over. She not only gave him all the clothes but invited him to stay at her home. The next day, when Burke came looking for Neil, all he found was a note. When Burke followed the address, he saw a standalone mansion, something he couldn't afford if he worked for several lifetimes. Just when he thought he had the wrong place, the widow said he was in the right spot. He's upstairs. When Burke reached the top floor, his jaw dropped. This was the kind of lifestyle he wouldn't wouldn't even dare to dream about. But there was Neil, acting like he owned the place, casually reading the paper and sipping coffee. Burke immediately asked Neil how he pulled this off. Neil said he just helped the widow clean her car and look after her granddaughter, and in return, he got to stay in the guest room for free. Burke's response was pure sarcasm, saying that sounded like nanny work. That's when the granddaughter walked over to him.
Morning, Neil.
Granddaughter.
She's an art student.
Burke was both envious and jealous. In half a day, Neil had achieved a lifestyle Burke could never have in his entire life. He immediately ordered Neil to go change clothes. While he sat down to experience the high life for a moment himself, Burke praised the coffee while simultaneously throwing shade, reminding everyone that Neil was a convicted felon. The widow's response?
So was Byron.
When Neil reappeared in an expensive suit, Burke's eyes nearly popped out. He examined this handsome, sophisticated felon from head to toe. In the end, all he could do was reluctantly tell him to hurry up. The two then arrived at the airport. An assistant received a notice from customs. They'd caught a Dutchman at the border with several large suitcases full of Snow White fairy tale books from 1944. And this wasn't the first time. His previous 3 entries were the same deal. All Snow White books. Burke looked them over but couldn't find anything suspicious. He went straight to question the Dutchman, but since there was no evidence of wrongdoing, Burke didn't get any useful information before the guy's lawyer showed up and scared him off. Just as he was complaining to the customs officer about how quickly the lawyer arrived, he learned that no lawyer had called ahead for an appointment, which meant that lawyer was a fake. By the time they rushed back to the holding room, the Dutchman was already dead.
I need paramedics in here now. Nobody frisk the lawyer. Ah!
The more suspicious this got, the more it proved something was wrong with those books, and only Neil could solve this mystery. He discovered that the flyleaves of these fairy tale books were all made from special Spanish vellum from 1944. Nobody makes that paper anymore. 3 shipments would give them about 600 sheets of this specialty paper. It had to be for forging some kind of artwork. Then they found a business card in the dead man's wallet, the day before he went to Spain to buy books. He'd visited an archive. The curator said he remembered this man had come several times, always looking at the same World War II-era Spanish bond. Burke held up the blank paper cut from the fairy tale books. It was a perfect match. The Dutchman was trying to forge this rare bond, and that bond just happened to be issued in 1944. Over all these years, it had hardly ever been redeemed, because legend had it that most of these bonds were buried in war ruins. Only one known copy existed today.
Except it's a forgery.
No, this has been here since 1952.
It's been here less than a week.
The curator thought this was ridiculous. Neil immediately presented his evidence. He said the bond was forged nearly perfectly, but they'd overlooked the issue of ink dating. You could still clearly smell the undried gum Arabic. After technical analysis confirmed it. Sure enough, the ink had been printed within the last week. The bonds had a 9% annual interest rate. After all these years, each $1,000 bond was now worth $250,000. 600 bonds would total over $150 million. But they couldn't figure out why the Dutchman would swap a fake bond into the archive.
What if he claimed he found boxes of the original bonds?
Drag them out of those caves in Spain.
Yeah, how would they be authenticated?
They'd be taken to the archives and compared to the original.
Which he's already switched out with one of his own copies.
So of course they're gonna match. Oh, this is good.
Now all they had to do was find out who was printing these bonds, and they could dig up the real mastermind behind the Dutchman. Back at the widow's house, Neil suddenly discovered a stranger had broken in. Just as he cautiously turned on the light, he realized the man was his good friend Motzi. This friend always appeared out of nowhere. Whatever couldn't be done, Motzi could make happen. Neil immediately showed him the electronic ankle monitor, but Motzi said there was nothing he could do. This latest model monitor couldn't be removed without triggering the alarm. When Neil asked about Kate's whereabouts, Motzi was equally regretful. He said Kate had vanished into thin air, but he promised he'd help look for her. After all the small talk, Neil finally remembered the bonds. After Motzi examined the unique craftsmanship, he promised to have information by tomorrow at the latest. Sure enough, early the next morning, Burke got a call from the police. Neil's ankle monitor had moved outside its designated range. Burke immediately knew something was wrong. Just as he was about to pack up and go arrest him, he found Neil laughing and chatting with his own wife. Burke never expected Neil to make a move on his home turf. Even his own dog had been won over by Neil, just as he was about to lose it. Neil said he came to share good news. He knew who was forging the bonds, because forgeries can't be directly signed. But many master forgers share a habit: they leave their initials somewhere inconspicuous on each piece. Neil admitted that the forgeries confiscated from him also had signatures. Burke just never noticed them, and this person was currently restoring murals at a church. The two immediately decided to check it out at the church.
Meet me in the car. I'm gonna say goodbye to my wife now.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you after all these years.
The two then arrived at the church. Sure enough, they found the initials C and H on the mural, though this time, the letters were blended into the pattern, making them even more hidden. Knowing the name made things easier. Unfortunately, the assistant discovered that Hagen had booked a flight to Spain. He was leaving the country in 1 week. If they couldn't catch Hagen, Neil would be going back to prison for another 4 years. But that's when Motzi brought good news. He'd already tracked down the location of Hagen's print shop. Neil then took apart a cigarette with half its filter removed and found a note inside with the exact location of Hagen's print shop. The two immediately headed to the factory from the note. The front and back doors both both had guards posted. They could clearly hear the roar of printing presses inside. This was most likely Hagen's hideout, but Burke didn't just charge in. Instead, he went back to the office and tossed Neil a thick book of search and seizure regulations without direct evidence. They couldn't barge in, but that wasn't going to stop someone as smart as Neil. He memorized the entire thing in just one night. Looking down at his electronic ankle monitor, he'd already figured out a plan. On his way out, he casually took the widow's Bentley. Before long, Burke's phone rang. The station notified him that Neil had once again exceeded his range. At that moment, Neil was driving the Bentley, pretending to be a tourist, randomly taking pictures outside the factory. The guards immediately surrounded him. They not only confiscated his camera but dragged him straight into the factory. Seeing the floor piled high with Snow White fairy tale books and the ink printing machine spinning like crazy, Neil felt pretty lucky he'd made the right bet. The guards locked him in the office, but Neil's whole plan was to be easy to invite in but impossible to get rid of. When no one was looking, he locked the door from the inside and pulled out the key. The bulletproof glass meant no one. He outside could get in. They had to go find another key, but Neil was completely relaxed, calm and composed. He revealed his electronic ankle monitor. Moments later, sirens sounded outside. Fully armed police burst through the doors. Everyone on site was immediately detained. Burke was absolutely beaming at this point.
This is what the law calls an exigent circumstance. Any of you Harvard grads know what that is? No hands? Diana?
Exigent circumstance allows us to pursue a suspect onto private property without obtaining a warrant.
And to seize any and all evidence that has been discovered in plain view, regardless of the connection to the original crime.
The bonds being mass-printed were proof enough of this group's crimes. Burke's grin was so wide it was harder to control than an AK. Neil hadn't been idle either. In the office safe, he'd found the real bond that had been switched out from the archive. With this, the chain of evidence formed a perfect circle. The international case was successfully cracked. According to their previous agreement, Burke issued Neil an FBI consultant badge. With this legitimate identity, Neil temporarily went from convicted felon to civil servant, but he'd have to work as Burke's lackey for the next 4 years under supervision. Still, his girlfriend Kate's current whereabouts remained Neil's biggest concern. That's all for this episode. We'll continue next time.